Welcome to the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm Nate Hedrick.
And I'm David Bright. We're both pharmacists and real estate investors that believe that real estate investing does not have to distract from a meaningful career in pharmacy.
Each episode, we share stories that educate and inspire pharmacists to leverage real estate investing as a part of your financial plan. Hey, David, how's it going?
Hey, good, thanks. How you doing, man?
Good, man. I just got back from a little Florida sunshine, spring break action with the kiddos, and doing good. It was nice to get away from, I love Cleveland, but it was nice to get away, get a little sun for a little bit.
Yeah, those of us that deal with the Midwest, snow, gray, winter, yeah, definitely nice to get out of town and see a change of scenery here and there. I hear you on that one.
Yeah, and that trip coupled with the conversation we just had with the guest we had on today, talking about where someone might be living, and I thought about when I got out of pharmacy school and we were trying to determine where we were going to live, and I, again, picked Cleveland, which not everybody would do, but it made me think about that. Like, where do you live? How do you live? How do you afford it? Do you house hack, which we're going to talk about? Do you buy your own place? And it was a good reminder of that conversation and how those conversations can come up.
Yeah, it brought me back to my college days because in pharmacy school, I lived with two different roommates that owned the house. They did the house hacking thing. They bought a single family house and they rented out the bedrooms to other folks that were also in college. And so I don't know why I didn't do it then, because I'm seeing their success with that, as well as folks like our guest today that were able to acquire a lot of rental units really early on in their career and with really low down payment mortgage strategies.
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to have a conversation with Dr. Ayush Gupta. Dr. Gupta is a pediatric emergency room physician. He also is a real estate investor and started basically an online community called MD House Hacking, where he teaches doctors and other medical professionals all about the concept of house hacking and how someone can do it in a really positive and helpful way. And I really like what he has to say.
Yeah, I know we've talked before about that ability to use the rent of roommates or folks in other units in the property to offset the mortgage and how that can be really positive. He gets into a lot of strategy about how that can snowball into multiple properties in a short period of time, knowing that you can buy another one of these essentially every year, in some cases faster with different strategies. And so he's been able to acquire a lot of units quickly and do it in a really creative way.
Yeah, what I particularly like too is that he's not somebody that goes in like a lot of the guests that we've talked to, who put sweat equity in. Right? It's all about, I bought this place, it needed a ton of work, I lived in it and dealt with it while I fixed it up at 8 o'clock on the weekends. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, he hires it all out, he gets it all done professionally and doesn't have to worry about doing it himself, and the model still works, which I think is really telling and really impressive.
Yeah, I think it's a much more like tolerable approach and a much easier lift to get into a property. You hear about a lot of house hacking that's maybe a small unit, maybe it's a rougher neighborhood. There can be a lot of things that are just not as enticing about that strategy.
Mhm.
But hearing how he was able to jump into a nice neighborhood, a remodeled unit, and then do that again and change neighborhoods and change everything about that with frequency. So it didn't become this like life sentence to live in this house hack, right? But he was
Right.
able to do this in stages and have it play really well into his financial plan.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you guys enjoy it. Again, we had a great time talking with Ayush, so hopefully you guys enjoy the episode. And with that, we'll let you jump right in. Hey, Ayush, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, you guys. I'm a great fan, so thanks for having me on the show. Look forward to
Yeah,
it.
we're excited to talk to you. I mean, we don't get to talk to too many docs on the show. It's usually just the pharmacist scene, so it's really cool to. I feel like we're on the collaborative hospital team right now, bringing in the physicians. So this is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why. I did a podcast with one of the pharmacists recently, and he recommended me to you guys. And I have no idea why docs and pharmacists don't collaborate a little more, because we are same. A lot of things, I think, from what I've heard in your podcast, very similar thought process, similar both going through long years of training and just knowing nothing about finances. So
Yeah,
very common.
couldn't have said it better myself. That's precisely what I wanted to have you on today, because you're in the same boat as us, right? Same kind of situation, and you're doing the same kind of education that we are. So we thought, why not share your story, get more of that message out there, and learn some from you. So why don't you jump right off? Tell us a little bit about just your background, your story, your journey to becoming a physician, and then we can get into the real estate from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm going to start from being born raised in India. So I'm not from here. I was born raised in India. I went to med school from high school. So in India, you decide what you want to do in middle school, because while you're going into high school, you want to know. So for me, I was I was 6 when it was decided for me that I'm going to go to the med school,
Wow.
because my brother was 6 years older than me. So for him, it was decided at that age. So it was very early that I knew. My parents gave me a stethoscope, knowing that I'm going to be going to med school already. So it was pretty early on. 18 is when I got into med school. India like super competitive to get into med school. I did not enjoy the competitive environment. So, for example, when I got into med school, 100,000 people applied and 1,000 got in. So basically, it's a high ratio of not getting into med school, and it's a lot of like cutthroat competition. It's not like good competition. It's like, I'm going to push you down so that I get in. It's kind of that. So I kind of did not relate with that. Fast forward 2012. I mean, I took my steps while I was in med school. And 2012, I moved to New York. In New York, I did my 3 years of residency in pediatrics. From there, I moved to Michigan, where I did another 3 years in pediatric emergency medicine fellowship. And you know how it is in med school and pharmacy school. You just go through training for a long period of time. So 2019, I moved to New Orleans, and that's where I work as a pediatric emergency medicine physician.
Okay. Very cool. And so obviously you're on this show talking about real estate. So at some point in there, real estate entered into the picture. And amongst these, 80-hour plus weeks of residency and everything else, like where did you find time and how did real estate start to fit in?
Yeah, my dad was a real estate mogul. I'm kidding. No, we have no real estate background. Never heard about it. So, and the funny thing is, it's probably the same in pharmacy school. In med school, we never talk about it.
No.
In med school,
Mhm.
residency, fellowship, like what, 12 years, zero talk about finances, zero talk about real estate. um, I was going through the same path as anybody else, graduating and becoming an attending or getting a job, is trying to buy a nice single family home in New Orleans, like everybody does. After you finally start getting a paycheck, and you're like, all right, let's go splurge. That's the first thing you want to do. You want to buy a nice car, nice house. I was on the same path in 2019. I was looking at single family houses. New Orleans is beautiful, like architectural wise. They have tall ceilings, big windows. I was trying to look at one of those historic homes. Fortunately for me, or unfortunately, COVID hit in
Mhm.
2020 in March, and New Orleans was one of the most rampant cities, because it was right after Mardi Gras. We had a lot of patients,
Oh, wow.
and it kind of stopped everything. You can't go and buy real estate at that point. There was no showings. There was nothing going on. Um, so that's when actually, that's when I started thinking about real estate. But what made me start thinking about real estate was seeing my colleagues, my attendings, my mentors in Michigan that I came from, losing their jobs or being
Mm.
furloughed.
Mm.
And it's tough to think that. For me, it was fresh. Like, I just finished 12 years of training, and I'm like, okay, this is life now. I'm going to be a doctor for like the next 40 years, and I'm going to make money. I'm going to retire after at 65, and I'm going to live off my retirement. That's like the usual herd mentality that we all think, and that's how I was told, okay, this is what everybody else does, so I'm going to do the same thing. But then I saw people who were like 20, 30 years of me, who were like 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they were either their 401k was cut into half because the stocks crashed during that time
Yeah.
as well, and they were trying to retire and they couldn't, or they were retiring with half of what they thought they were going to retire on, or
Mhm.
people were getting furloughed, not getting paid. So that's when I'm like, I need a second stream of income. If something happens, at least I need to have a shelter at my place. And yeah, that's when real estate came about.
I love that, because I think most people assume, and I think this is assumed on the pharmacist side too, right? Like, oh, you've got a great job, you make good salary, like you don't have to worry about anything. Like your finances are basically just taken care of on their own. But that's obviously not the reality, right? And especially somebody that's getting close to retirement, if you're at a bad time and everything's stuck in stocks, like you're at the mercy of the market at that point. So I love hearing that from somebody on your side of the field, because I think that that's a common misconception. It's good to keep putting that out there. So you obviously got into the world of house hacking though. So tell us a little about, and we've talked about house hacking on the podcast in the past, but give us the kind of the 10,000 foot view, and maybe why, that felt like a good fit for you. And that was the world of investing you wanted to get into.
Yeah, so the 10,000 foot view is basically house hacking is you are living in a portion of the building, whether it's the same house, same unit, and sharing your space or units with somebody else. So I like to define it like, you can be a med student sharing a room in the house, and the others are helping you pay for the mortgage. Or you can be an attending or a resident who's just starting out, and you have a unit in a 3 unit or a 2 unit building, and they're cutting down your mortgage to half by getting the rent. Or you can be like a later stage in life in which you have a big house and you have a artificial dwelling unit or something in the back, and that's how you're offsetting your mortgage. So that's basically house hacking. you know Most of us during training or med school shared rooms with people. That's basically we're sharing rooms and just giving the money to rent at that point. If we own that
Mhm.
place and you were collecting money from your colleagues, that would be house hacking. So that's like the 10,000 foot view of it. You basically get a property, you try to cut down your mortgage, you try not to pay rent, and you get all the advantages of house hacking. So basically, you still get your loan pay down, you get your appreciation, you get the tax benefits. um, so bunch of benefits for me. Like I said, in COVID, when I saw that people were having trouble for the next mortgage payment because they're like, I don't know if I'm going to get a paycheck next in 2 weeks. So that's when I was like, I need to be at a place where at least I know I can live somewhere. Doesn't matter if I get a paycheck or not. And I did not have a lot of money. I just became an attending. I did not have a lot of savings at that point. So I was, what can I do in which I have to bring least amount of money and I can figure out that I do not have to pay for mortgage. So that's what I did, and I'm happy to go into the numbers. But basically, I bought a 4 unit building, and I made it in a way that I had to put least amount of money down, or whatever I had, I put it down, and then paid no rent or no mortgage ever after that.
Yeah, I'd love for you to go into the numbers on that. I think that'd be great to hear because I would imagine that you're using like low down payment strategies that come with an owner occupant building, and then other people are paying the rent. And I know that Nate and I have talked about that kind of ethereal concept, and we've had a couple people share those examples, but examples make it really real. So yeah, if you could share those numbers,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, I bought this house in New Orleans. It was listed for $650,000. It sounds a lot, right? It's $650,000. That's very expensive. Um, and then I could not afford 20 to 25% down. That would be around 120 to $150,000, and that I did not have in savings. But what I did, and this was a 4 unit building. Each
Mhm.
unit was 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom. And I was starting out after being attending. I did not have a family, no kids, and I bought the place with a 3.5% FHA loan. That's what I did at that point. I know a lot more creative strategies, and the current house hack that I live in, I moved from there to a new house hack. I paid 0% down, but that time I did not know that there's 0% down possibilities as well. So I used the FHA 3%, 3.5% down. So that after all closing costs and everything, I was at $25,000 is what I brought to the table. Um, and then I got access to the building. I got access to the building. The 4 units already had tenants living in it. My overall expenses for the property, the PIT, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, basically was $3,300 because I had it was 2020. There was like amazing
Mhm.
interest loan interest rates going on. So I had a 3% loan. So 3,300. Then I added $1,000 on property management, all the vacancy capex that I calculate. So for total 4,300 was my expenses. With the 4 units being occupied, I used to make 6,000. Obviously, I moved into 1 unit, and then I used to start. I still made 5,300 to live over there. So I was making, and before that, when I was renting for like 9 months approximately after I moved to New Orleans, I was renting for 22.95.
Wow.
So just by doing that, I mean, I invested $25,000. However, my spread was somewhere over $3,200 a month after saving the rent and taking the income that I was getting to live there. I mean, I think I got lucky with a slam dunk kind of house hack. To be honest, that time, right market, right interest rate, property was great. it worked out. But I think that just spread that I had, or even if I cut down to 22.95 to $0, or even like $500 to live somewhere, that would have that, I was just looking for that, honestly.
Yeah.
um, so those were the basic numbers. I went through a lot of process after that. Eventually what I did was I took private money, and I did not made a lot of money that time. So I took private money, renovated the property one unit at a time, increased the rents over there, and then refi it, and
Mm.
got all my 25,000 and the private money out. The 650 became 950 in a year. That was the new appraised value of it. Again, I think I rode the market a little bit. So I got all the money out. I was living there for free. I had the $1,000 coming in, and then I got a line of credit. So apart from refi, now I got a 25%. I got out of the FHA loan. I got a conventional 25%, so 75% loan to value loan. And then I got a HELOC because I lived over there up to 90%. So that HELOC money I took and bought other properties. So that was the overall process of what I did for the first 2 years in
I love
2020
that.
and 20.
I love that you boil it down in like 3.5 minutes, and most people are just like, "There's no way." But it's like you took every little step and just walked through it, and obviously you had a good timing, right? Like the timing worked out, but it was also just taking the initiative. And even if you hadn't ridden that market appreciation, like it still would have worked out in a really good
Yeah.
shape. So yeah, I that's awesome. Thank you so much for going through those numbers. Like that helps a ton.
Yeah, and it's basically doing strategic renovations and just
Mhm.
having mentors. I had zero background about real estate. Again, I my first few months of buying a real estate, I mean, I had the worst experiences ever. It's you always go through failures. You always go through the. Everybody thinks whoever your audience is listening to, oh, it must be easy for him. But honestly, you go through a lot of stuff. Anybody who's got into any kind of entrepreneur journey, real estate, business, podcasting, coaching, I realize it's a lot of downs and then a little bit of up, a lot of downs, a little bit of up. So that's what I went through. And just having the help over there helped. And the help, basically, the mentors helped me figure out that this is the renovation you do, which is going to have your maximum value. This is the outside paint you need to do that's going to have your maximum when you go to appraise the property. So those things help a lot.
Yeah, I think that there's something there because, as you mentioned, there's not a lot of financial training in either one of our programs. I also didn't learn how to do drywall in pharmacy school. I didn't learn any carpentry in pharmacy school. So there's not a lot of this that I could do myself, right? That didn't come with a pharmacy degree.
Yeah,
Uh, that's
100%.
probably a good thing too, because as I've tried to teach myself, it's not good. But one of the things that I think we do learn in our programs is collaboration with people of other
Yeah.
disciplines and putting good heads together. So I really love this mentorship, and then presumably finding contractors to do some of this work as well. I feel like that's one of the scariest parts for people because I can understand raw numbers and I can look at a spreadsheet and say, well, if we invest $20,000 in this unit, it'll rent for more. But how do you figure out that $20,000? That feels really intimidating people that have not done some of this rehab work before. How did you approach that kind of mechanically and bringing people in and all that?
Somebody had asked me a question like, why do you think doctors become the best entrepreneurs or have a potential, whether it's pharmacists or physicians? Why do we become the best? I think there's like so many things to say to the point that you were saying. We do a great job at collaboration and teams. I,
Mm.
I run a code in the ER. I can never do that alone. I need a pharmacist. I need a nurse. I need my residents, my fellows, RTs, everybody. So we have that instinct, like, set up in us. And then the other thing is we're hardworking. We have so much grit. We've gone through this 8-10 years of training, studying for like 14-15 hours a day. So we have a lot of capabilities and already skills that is needed in being a real estate entrepreneur, to be honest. So for me, to go into the tactical part of it, like how did I figure out 20,000 would work, is anytime I get a rehab done, I have a rehab or a flip I need to do, I get three quotes. The best places that at least currently that works for me is, now I have a big team, but what I do is Facebook Marketplace locally of real estate investor groups. That's a really good place to try to find contractors or
Yep.
even handyman or plumber if you're trying to go, because those are guys that use these guys all the time. Rather than, you can ask your realtors, you can ask your lenders, you can ask a lot of other people for references, but I think that is a very genuine group because people are using it for them. Then you get three of them come in, create a very same scope of work. Like suppose you want to add one bathroom, one kitchen, do paint, write it down in a Google Doc, give it to them, the same paper, and then ask them, okay, can you come walk through the place with me? What do you think about it? Can you give me a feedback on what your cost and your timeline is going to be? Interview all of them. There's some questions you can definitely ask, and then see what they come out with. And that's how I think. That's how what's helped me apart to be very on point. I don't think any renovation I've done has been exact dollar amount, to be honest. It's always gone over. So anybody
Hmm.
who says, oh, I've gone under the renovation, I'm like, that's great. But it's never gone under, it's always gone over. And then just I think setting up incentives has helped a lot. So for example, if somebody comes to me and they're like, okay, I can do this work for $25,000, and I'll be like, and I'm going to ask the next question, how long it's going to take you? And they'll be like, I'll do it in 6 months. And I'll be like, okay, so what if you finish in 5 months, and I'll give you $2,000 extra for the every month early you finish? And they're like, sure, yeah, 27, I'll finish in 5 months. But to the caveat that if you take 7 months, I'm going to cut down $500 every day from your time. So obviously, this is an arbitrary thing, but that is a great strategy that has helped me a lot to figure out a good negotiation with the contractor, get them on board with the time.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Aligning incentives. I feel like in healthcare, oftentimes that's very natural for us because we want to see the patient get better, right? Like that's very clear for
Yeah,
us. But aligning incentives here with a contractor relationship that can be our adversarial at times unless you can find those win wins. So I like that a lot. I feel like I love
yeah,
the Google Doc tip and getting that very clear scope of work. One of the things that I personally struggle with at times is I always want to make the property maybe nicer than it needs to be because I see something on TV or I see something on social media. And I'm like, oh, we could do this shiplap wall and we could do this and it would look so cool. How do you set limits there so that you're making good business decisions along the way? And it sounds like part of that may be mentors that you've engaged as well.
yeah. It's outside people who are helping me out on that. To be honest, I've got better with that. I actually wrote an article on it one time. My first property, I was so emotional about it. I would walk past it every day. I would drive past it every day. Even if the renovations going on, the contracts doing, I would want to go in every day over there. So emotional. And that's what, all the wins I had, there was some losses in it too. Like I was saying, I set up a budget for 25,000, it went to 30,000. That's a loss. And getting emotionally attached is very common when you try to buy your first property or you try to rehab. I think it's like it takes reps like anything else. When you go through the process, and then the other thing with house hack, it costs you a little more emotions because you're going to be living in that place. So
Hmm.
you're choosing what kind of property you want it to look. However, you have to understand, it's not your forever home. Second, you have to think about it as an investment property. Third, for myself, I think about when I was a tenant, what was the guy giving me when I was living over there, So those things help me a lot. Just getting the emotion is the biggest thing I've figured out. Just take the emotion out of it. Think about it as a business. When you start investing, even if it's house hacking, you are trying to run a business. Um, try not to make it your perfect home because you're not trying to live over there. So think about it as business. Take the emotion out of it. That's how it worked. And then the outside mentors, they obviously help, because if you talk to somebody, suppose if somebody's coming to me and they're like, this is my first renovation I'm doing, and I want to put, like you were saying, I want to put shiplap on it, I want to have a crazy drywall, I want to have some crown molding. I'll be like, does it help? Will you get more rent when you do that? No. So that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an example.
Those are some great tips, and I think that it gives you a clear picture of just how to approach things from a very stepwise approach, which I think a lot of our audience can resonate with. One of the things that always comes to mind, like you talked about finding this deal, and like you hit a home run, right? And again, some of that was timing, but some of it was just like finding a great deal. How do you source these deals? Like, what are some of the processes that you use to find properties, especially in the pretty competitive and niche multifamily space?
Yeah, so things have changed from 2020 to what it is now.
Hmm.
There's so many properties out there right now that I don't have to go through the process of what I usually have to go through. But this is what I do. So again, I use the Facebook groups, but I also use the local realtors group. There's so many online realtors you can reach out to. What I do is I make first my deal criteria.
Mm.
So everybody's deal criteria is going to be different. For you, David, for you guys, it might be different. So maybe somebody wants to buy a single family house and want a house hack by a room, or buy a duplex and go through that. So I make a very specific deal criteria. So I'll give you the five things for it. So one is going to be your location, your zip code that you want to buy in. Second, your cost, how big of a property you want to buy in, how many beds and baths, whether you want a single family, duplex, triplex, fourplex. Those are the big criteria. And how far, for us specifically medical professionals, how far you want it from the hospital. So that encompasses the zip code as well. So I make the deal criteria and then I throw it out to like maybe 5, 10 people. I'm going to give it to the realtors, I'm going to give it to the wholesalers.
Mm.
One thing to know, the caveat is, once you try to get wholesalers to come give you a deal, you'll probably have to do some renovation work to it as compared to a realtor when they bring the deal which
Hmm.
is more done. Stick to the deal criteria. That's the biggest thing I can tell anybody. Is like, if you have decided that a two bedroom duplex works for you, go stick to the deal criteria. It doesn't matter what comes on the market. If you think that $500,000 is your upper limit, stick to the deal criteria, because there's gonna be so many ways to like sway from one portion to the other. So sticking to the deal criteria and then giving it out there to the realtors is the best way. Like, when I teach anybody how to house hack, one of the first things we talk about is, don't worry about looking at anything yet, just make this 5 or 7 points of deal criteria and go from there.
Yeah, I really like that. Again, it shows the stepwise process and the team approach, right? You're not just like, I'm going out
Right.
and I'm sending out letters and I'm pounding on doors and driving the neighborhoods. Like, no, you're like, I'm working at the hospital, and
Yeah.
then I send out the people that are actually good at this and I have them bring the deals to me. Like, I think that's so important, because I think so many people get overwhelmed with the idea that like, I have to do everything. And it's like, no, you just have to be in the middle and then send everything else to everybody else. So I think that's great. And I think, the other thing that you mentioned too is at your first place, right? So you talked about doing some of these bigger rehabs, but even the first place you bought, it was tenanted, all 4 units ready to go. It didn't
Mhm.
need a rehab right off the bat. Like, that was the eventual process, but you don't have to find something that needs to be worked on, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You don't have to. Like, some people don't have time. If I had to do something in residency or fellowship, when
Mm.
you're working 60, 80 hours a week, and I also didn't have money, I would never do a rehab, or I would not think about doing a rehab. I'm not a handy guy. I'm putting
Hmm.
a nail, like, we just had to put like a bracket in the wall. It took my fiance like 2 months to get me to do that, because I don't like to do that at all. I don't know how to do that. So, just being honest, as a resident or a fellow, I would not have been trying to go into a rehab process. It's just that you can increase the value
Hmm.
of a property, and that's the advantage of doing a rehab strategically. So, but people who are busy, like, a pharmacist, you all work so much. Like, you guys do like 7 in a row. Sometimes I hear, sometimes you guys have 7 off. This all the crazy shifts like we guys do. So
Hmm.
sometimes you don't have time to do that. You can buy. There's so many, like, just in my market right now, I can see so many duplexes or fourplexes or threeplexes that's out there which people can house hack. I think the biggest thing that I see is like, and I see that among people who are my colleagues for the last 4 years, and we've 5 years we've working together, and they're like, we want to buy a house, we want to buy a house, we want to buy a house, we want to buy an investment property. 5 years have gone by, they haven't taken the step. There's
Hmm.
always going to be a problem. There's always going to be either the market's too hot, or the interest rate's too high, or the insurance has gone up. There's going to be some reason that people don't want to take the step. You just have to like decide what your goal is and just go from there.
Yeah, I want to talk about scaling for a minute also, because you've not just done the one property, you've done others, and you described how, buying something that was relatively turnkey helped you to get started, and then you're able to fix it up in order to drive some appreciation of the property, which allowed you to borrow against that equity that you created to go buy more properties. And I think that's a relatively common thing that we hear is, once you get that first one, it just gets so much easier to go to the next one because there's more opportunity to drive value and create that equity. So what did that look like for you to buy that second property?
Yeah. So um, it basically stemmed from the other big thing. So this was in the middle of 2021. So 2020 August or September is when I closed on the first property, and then around February of 2021, I saw my tax bill as a physician. You know, It stemmed from that. I was, again, lack of financial education, no education on taxes at all, and you realize that 50% of your salary is going to taxes. So it stemmed from that. Did research, and I figured out there is a STR loophole for taxes, short-term
Mhm.
rental loophole, when you are trying to buy and trying to actively manage. We can go into details if you like to, but I basically, the next deal was, I gave myself 1 quarter. I was like dabbling with stuff, and I'm like, what am I doing? I know how to set a goal. I gave myself a quarter, and I'm like, okay, this quarter I'm going to buy a short term rental. And that was like the third quarter of 2021. Yes, third quarter. And then that's what I did. I bought a short term rental outside Asheville, North Carolina. Again, not in my neighborhood. It takes like, if we have to fly, we have to take 2 flights. There's not a direct flight to Asheville from New Orleans. So we have to take 2 flights to get there. And I have never been to Asheville. I have been to that property one time before buying it. And yeah, that's what I did. I basically ended up buying a short term rental. We did a little bit of, we did maybe like 2 months of rehab in that property, increased the value as well. Whole basement we converted into a living playroom, bunk space. So that was a lot of fun. And yeah, I still have it. It's basically a short-term rental. That was the second property that I ended up buying that year.
Yeah, and we did
And
talk
then
with.
later on could write off a lot of taxes on it because of cost, second bonus appreciation. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a super powerful strategy. We back on episode 113, we talked with Amanda and Matt, two accountants that kind of walked us through that,
Oh
especially
yeah.
after having a few other pharmacists that have worked that loophole, and super powerful strategy for building and scaling. Because you're right, when you can when you can delay those taxes and have more income, that allows you to do more things. So that's second property. What's the next couple steps and kind of the near future looking like for you then?
In the future. So after that, I bought. I would say, like you were saying, after you buy the first one, you get a lot of confidence. It kind of snowballed for me a little bit more. I'm a medical professional. I think we have a very common kind of mindset of being risk averse, and
Mhm.
I think I have the same kind of mindset. Anything we do, we feel like we're gonna lose everything that we learned or everything we
Yep.
earned. Like we work so
Right?
hard for it. I don't want to give my money to anybody. Forget about the syndication, forget about real estate. I don't. So I'm very similar to that. I want to control it. So I basically started buying 1 to 2 properties every year since then. So since then I bought like 6 properties, and 2023 was last year is when I bought 2 more properties. I haven't bought anything this year. We just went under contract for a property, but I don't think that's going to work out. In the future, you know um, I have, one of my visions that I have, like I have a vivid vision thing that I wrote for 5 years. And I don't know if you guys read the book.
Yeah.
Amazing book,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of those things was, I have like 5 vacation rental properties in 5 of the destinations where I like to stay and travel a lot.
Cool.
And one is a mountain where we have a property already. And then all the other properties that I bought was mainly in New Orleans, which is mid-term rentals and long-term rentals, multifamily buildings. And so my next is to buy another vacation rental in Mississippi. So that's what we're looking at right now.
Nice. That's awesome. I do want to touch
Yeah.
on two because I think you've alluded to it a couple of times, and I think it's relevant to what's going on right now. Is like you're still buying right now. I think there's a lot of people talking in the market about, oh, it's not a good time to buy. There's interest rates too high, inventory is too low. Like fill in the gap with whatever problem, right? What are you seeing out there? Like, is it a time to sit back and wait? Is it a time to buy? Like, what is your assessment on the current market conditions?
Oh, great question. So we had this call yesterday. I'm part of this mastermind group, and we were doing this call in the current state of affairs in real estate market. It was just yesterday,
Mm,
so it's fresh off. Um, it is very market specific.
mm,
So if you look at New Orleans, you look at Austin. These are like 2 markets that I follow a lot. They have the worst markets, like worst kind of drops in the price or home sales that we've seen in the last year or so.
mm.
New Orleans has around 9 or 10% drop in whole over year. It's ticking up a little bit. But then if you look at specifics of it, you look at the fact that those are old homes. Those are the ones which are sitting on the market. New homes are still flying off the shelves.
Yep.
If it's done right, you have good renovation, they're still flying off the shelf. It doesn't matter what the interest rates, it doesn't matter what the insurance is. In California and West Coast, it is they're having a bidding war. My friend just put a property up for 1.25, and they had a bidding war over there in the Bay Area for that 1.25 non-renovated property. So, like I said, it's very market dependent. It depends on where anybody is. So that's the big thing that I'm seeing. I think even in my market, if I like narrow down to New Orleans, I can see people buying every day, and transactions are happening every day. You just have to work a little harder. For example, if I was analyzing 5 deals and I was saying that, okay, this one worked for me, now I have to do a little more harder work. Now I have to analyze 15 deals and be like, okay, based on all insurance, tax, insurance is a big cost for us, insurance and interest rates, this property works for us. That's what I'm seeing a little more now. There's a lot more inventory out there that's sitting on the market for a long period of time. The sellers are coming to grip a little bit more about the interest rates and what their property values should be. So
Mhm.
those are the couple of things that I'm seeing. And it, again, anybody who's listening to this, I would say it's very market specific. Your market might be completely different from my market. You can get your data from your local real estate, NAR, even the Fred data from Missouri. Those are like good places to get the data and see your local market, what is doing. And I can just say, like, I make like a game plan on what I want to do. So um, if you make a game plan on what you want to do, like your quarterly goal or yearly goal, you go through that and you just have to do your inputs. Don't
Mhm.
worry about your outputs, do your inputs. Suppose you want to buy a property by the end of the quarter, and you think that you, instead of doing the output, hey, and worrying about it, oh, I want to buy a property, I want to buy, think about what inputs you need to do. I need to analyze 10 deals a day, just do that. Or I need to make in 10 offers, just do that. And that's how you will get the property, the next one you're looking for. And I think that works for anything in life. I'm doing fitness for that right now. It works for that too.
I really like that, and I think I've heard others say that, and it's something I need to practice more myself because it's so easy to focus on the output, like you said, the result of what you're trying to achieve, and like if you don't hit that, it feels like a failure, right? But if you could just focus on the actual thing you can control and do that day
Yeah.
in and day out, you're going to build success from there. So I think that's a great tip. I hope everybody was paying attention for that. I want to shift over then to our final infusion questions. So these are 3 questions we ask every new guest on the show. Get your hot takes on these. So number one is, what's one tangible strategy that you use to make sure your investing is working hand in hand with your career as a physician?
Okay. One investment strategy that's working.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So I would say there's so many I can think about, and I'm trying to give the best answer for it. I would say velocity banking. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but
Mm-mm.
that's something that I've been doing now, and that actually works really well for um, if you have a student loan debt, if you have a high interest home rate. I can explain you more about it if
Sure.
you guys want to, but
Yeah.
velocity banking is the one thing that I've been doing that's working pretty good for me. So give you like a brief 1 minute scenario on it. So you have most of the student debt or home mortgage are compound interest. When you take a line of credit or a personal loan from a bank, all of them are simple interest. So just an example, if you have $100,000 loan from a bank on a compound interest at 5% interest, you're going to pay 5,000 this year. The next year that amount will be based on 105,000. So for example, that will be 5% of 105,000, so it's going to be 51 or 5200. Simple interest is 5,000 every year. So velocity banking is basically, I take a line of credit on my house and I pay off the high interest debt that I have, whether it's student loan, credit card, mortgage. And then what I do is I get all my income into the line of credit, and the line of credit suppose depleted by 100, and then it goes up, and that I just have to pay a simple interest paid on daily balance. And that you can save hundreds and thousands of dollars. Helps a lot of us, like as medical professionals, when we have student debt. My real estate investment is actually tangibly helping to pay student debt or any kind of loans that I have to, by doing that.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, and it just shows how you can be a little smarter with the exact same money, and it can really be beneficial to you. So that's a great tip. Thanks.
Yeah. Second question is, what's one resource that has been most helpful to you in your career, in your real estate journey? So whether that's a book, a podcast, a person, author, website, whatever that resource would be.
I have to say, Bigger Pockets was a great resource when I started. The first few years, or yeah, definitely, I used to read the books from Brandon Turner a lot. I got into house hacking. He got into house hacking, and so it was very inspiring to see that that guy is so far ahead of you, and he's still house hacking in
Yeah,
Hawaii, from
in
what I
Hawaii.
know. He's got billions of dollars under asset management right now. So I think that was very inspiring to me to start with for real estate.
That's a good one. Yeah. And then third question, what is one piece of advice that you'd give to a pharmacist, physician, medical professional, one piece of advice that you'd give them if they're contemplating a start in real estate investing?
Okay, so one piece of advice I would give is find a mentor.
Mm.
That's the biggest advice I can tell you. So, if I was a pharmacist, a pharmacy student, for example, you work with you if you're in residency or you're a student, you work with other students, you work with your attendings, you work with people who are ahead of you. you know See whose life you like the most. You like I can tell you an example. Like, one of the attendings that I used to work with like 3 years ago used to go on 2 months of vacation every year, and then he used to come back, and I'm like, and he's like the highest productive doctor. He's always happy, he's not burnt out. I'm like, what is he doing? And I just went up to him like, dude, why are you so happy, man? What are you doing? Where do you go for 2 months? He's like, I don't know. I just go and refresh, and I take a mini vacation, mini break every 2 months. I mean, every 2 months in a year, I just travel and I shut myself off. I'm like, how do you do that? How do you afford it? So that kind of conversation, like, then he became my mentor. I used to say, okay, can I take you out for coffee and listen to, like, hear you talking about this and tell me everything that you know. So one piece of advice is find the person that you admire the most. Like, suppose you want to buy real estate, find the person that's buying a lot of real estate that you want to go through that. Take them out for coffee. Most people who are ahead of you, as much as you're fearful of it, will be so happy to give you any kind of advice in a very nice way, without asking you for anything.
I love that. I think that might be some really good advice of just find somebody whose life you like and go talk to them. I think that's great. I love that very much.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
love the part about
that's
doing that
that.
as a student or a resident, like really early in your
Mhm.
career, because that just has so much time to compound, right? In value as over time, kind of like starting with a house hack early in life, starting this investing early just has so much time to compound. Getting that advice early is beautiful. So I love it. If people want to reach out and learn more from you and connect with you, where can people find you and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so my website is mdhousehacking.com. That's my social media handle on Instagram as well. That's on LinkedIn as well. So those are the places. So basically, what I do is I have people come in. I just started YouTube. I don't want to share a lot about YouTube. I'm kind of shy to be on video a lot. So my video editor is after my life. I have like, I think, one long and maybe like 10, 15 shorts. So I'm not promoting that right now. But on the website, they come, they sign up, and have a conversation with me. That's a good way. Or just message me on Instagram.
That's great. Well, Ayush, thank you so much for coming on the show today, sharing all your knowledge, and just being an inspiration out there. I appreciate everything that you do and just the time that you spent with us. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was fantastic.
Thanks for listening to the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. If you like what you heard in today's show, please leave us a review and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, know someone that would make a good guest, or want to connect with us, head on over to yfprealestate.com and join the growing YFP Real Estate Investing Facebook group.
As we conclude this week's episode of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast, an important reminder that the content of this podcast is provided to you for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in this podcast and corresponding materials should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with their financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archive newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and therefore may not be accurate at the time you listen to it. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of your financial pharmacist unless otherwise noted and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer.
Thank you for your support of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. Have a great rest of your week.